Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and this is the summary for the day of 1209 to 1210 for the 16th to the 17th of June. This will include all the latest frontline changes report up to the, what's the time now? 7:30, almost 7:30 p.m. In Moscow time, which is probably more or less the same as Ukraine time. So we're gonna start off with the Sumi front first. Before we jump to the front line, there is this geolocation of Iskander strike on Ukrainian forces at Konotop. I haven't seen Konotop, this name appearing in reports since 2022. So it's kind of crazy that Konotop. Anyway, it's not very important honestly. Over in the Sumy front at the Tekino sector, the Russian forces continue to strike at the Ukrainian forces over at Rizivka, as well as Iskryskine. Anyway, there is a geolocation of FPV drone strike hitting Ukrainian assault forces over just off Iskryskivchina. The Ukrainians are still trying to counterattack and try to take Tekino. This is really getting very stupid. I'm not in command, so what do I know? So over in the north of Sumy, this you can see this is Sumy. In the north of Sumy, the Russian where the Russian main offensive operations are happening, we have fighting reported towards at Yablunivka, towards Novosich, towards Krapishkina, shelling at Kinyan. Kinyan. Anyway, it's Kinisia. And also fighting reported towards Pisarivka. Again, due to the lack of frontline changes, it's really hard to tell if all these attacks are actually assault, because this line I mentioned quite a number of times. This line here is already pretty good for a buffer zone. So going down, taking all these villages will just cause it to be not a buffer zone. So yeah, it would not be good. No, it would not be easy to defend. So at Yablunivka, according to the Ukrainian mapping, there is some slight frontline changes around Yablunivka, with Russian forces taking position at the lake in the northwest of Yablunivka. But otherwise, nothing really particularly special about this area for now. Nearby, over in the Satki region, Russian forces continue to attack towards Satki. And at Oleshnya, around Oleshnya, the Ukrainian mapping have mapped that the Russian forces have fully taken back all the territory in Kursk near Oleshnya, as well as entering into Sumy from another direction of Oleshnya towards Satki. So this becomes a two-pronged attack on Satki. But this is a big forest. I don't think it's going to matter a lot for, the Ukrainians of course have to send forces to the other side while they were defending the Russians that is coming from this patch of forest here. So additional work, but it's not impossible because the forest is still good cover. Over in the Belgorod incursion sector, where the Ukrainians did try to incur into Belgorod region, the Russians did not enter into this sector over here. We have some geolocation like two M1 trees was hit near in the north of Mariupolsky over here. This hit there. And at Petrushivka, so it's these two locations, both are M1 trees. So getting hit in two different positions. But that's about it. Not particularly special. So this front line here is pretty much dead for now. Not much thing is going to happen. All eyes on this part. So in the north of Sumy, we go to the next front line, which is the Kharkiv front. This is Kharkiv city, and in the Kharkiv front, a very peculiar thing is happening. The Russian forces are pushing over at Udi, as well as fighting reported at Kozacha Lopan. Udi was mentioned by the Russian Defense Ministry for 3 days straight now. So something is happening around this sector here, seemingly. And Kozacha Lopan was mentioned yesterday. Looks like there is some expansion of the operations. As I mentioned before, Udi and Kozacha Lopan used to be very strong positions for the Russians while the Kharkiv front was still a thing. in 2022, where the Russians still have strong positions in this sector before they withdrawn entirely because goodwill after they got broken their back due to the Balaklia offensive. But otherwise, yeah, the Russians are harassing the Ukrainians in this sector. I'm not sure if this will become some kind of offensive, but it's definitely very disturbing for the Ukrainians to have the Russians disturbing them in this sector. So, you know, we move on to the next front line, the Voreshna front. This is Voreshna. In the north of Voreshna, over in the Kanyamka sector, we have the Russian forces fighting at Kanyamka, as well as towards Koloziezny, which is over here. So this fighting towards Koloziezny is mentioned by the Russian Defense Ministry. The Ukrainians are still talking about Kanyamka. The Russians, however, did already announce the capture of Kanyamka. And so that's why there's this slight difference in terms of the report. So most likely what's happening right now is that the Russians are attacking in the direction of Koloziezny. So that's probably what's happening. The next front line the next report is over at Voreshna. So there is some kind of report seemingly saying that Dohanke has been captured by the Russian forces, I think, according to one of the Russian media. I didn't remember seeing it in the Russian Defense Ministry's report. However, fighting is now moving towards Dohanke. If it is captured, I wouldn't say it's a surprise at all due to where the front line is right now. Because of the Ukrainian map in this way, most likely the Russians actually have full control of the forest. They just need to cross across this area here, and yeah, Dohanke, there's basically nothing here. So capturing of this sector is not like a surprising thing, but definitely it would constitute a northern flanking operations towards Kokivka. So that is something that to look out for. How deep is the Ukrainian defense is really hard to tell in this sector, because this wasn't supposed to be a heavily defended area, but this is a very complicated geography, so it is not so easy to just punch through this area here unless you have a very big force and you're willing to take losses. So that's the main thing. So we move on to the Kupiansk front. So this is Kupiansk. At the Kupiansk front, there's nothing over in the southern flank. Over in the northern flank, fighting is reported in the region of Hulivivka, towards Kupiansk, and again towards Petropavlivka. This is very commonplace already. This is a routine, nothing special to talk about it. Stepova Novoselivka is mentioned for 3 days straight now. 3 days straight now with some kind of operation coming from the east. But nothing much is happening over Kupiansk front. It is still pretty much a place where the Russians are stretching the Ukrainians. This is pretty much used as a stretching zone, to do stretching. So yeah, so the reason for stretching is to prevent cramps, so you need to stretch it. So if you got cramp, then imagine your T-72 got cramp, then you need to go to the toilet quickly. The T-72 need to put on put some pampers, some diapers on the underwear for the T-72, and yeah, if not, it will start bleeding, then it's not good. So anyway, not very important per se, unless you're a tanker, then yeah, it's a tank thing, So over in the Borova front, this is Borova, and this is the Borova front. There is the two-prong attack happening around here. At Zarizove, there is some fighting reported here. The front line here is very unclear. So don't imagine this front line to be real. Quite sure that by now the front line actually is very different right now. There's a geolocation of a Ukrainian operating position got hit at Bohuslavka, but otherwise this is it for here. In the eastern flank, there is fighting reported at Kopanki as well as Nadia. So all of these locations here, Nadia, Kopanki, Stepi, is all already claimed to be captured by the Russian side. So yeah, so the fighting here definitely is a bit also, the front line there just take it with a pinch of salt. Over in the Oskil front, this is Oskil. The Oskil front is somewhere around here. So the Russian forces are fighting in the region of Rakivka, Ohivka, Novy Maya towards Hulushchenkove, Rikurub, as well as Lipove. So this Oskil sector has returned to many arrows. So past week or so, this place have went a bit quieter. So it looks like the Russians has rotated their forces or something. Then they are now back in action. So let's see how this goes. Over in the Liman front, this is Liman, and this is the Liman front. At the Liman front, fighting is reported towards Chandri Holove, Koloziazi, Zarishne, and through the Serbiansky forestry. So yeah, this one also, the main thing to watch out is Chandri Holove, to see how the Russians going to react there. The rest of the front line here, the Ukrainians have very strong lines. It's very hard to break through. But this area here is it's not the Russians already punched through where the defense line is. So it is more interesting to see whether the Russians, how fast are they going to reach Chandri Holove, because reaching here would complicate the Ukrainian strategic situation around here entirely. Like the north, this area here and this area here will be totally broken up. The north and the south at the Liman front, and totally, it will just be a big mess. And then before you know it, the Russians are back at Svetohursk, and then back at this this beautiful monastery, and then it will be a massive PR defeat for the Ukrainians. So because the Russians come back again, so the Ukrainians definitely don't want that to happen. And we move on to the Siversk front. This is Siversk. At the Siversk front, in the south there's nothing. The actions is all in the north, and the fighting is reported towards Siversk. That's happening, but the main star of the show is what's happening at the Krihorivka and Serbianka region. Because happy birthday to you if your birthday today, and remember to press the like button. Press the like button. It's just one click. Come on, just like it, and also make sure you are still subscribed, because YouTube sniper, the whole shebang. And also someone told me that I should tell you that you can just subscribe, because you can always unsubscribe later if you don't like what I say. So don't worry, it's not a lifetime commitment. You're not marrying me. No, if you marry me, you'll be very happy. But that depends on how pretty you are. But anyway, over in the Krihorivka region, so the Russian forces been geolocated here. They have captured more grounds, and from this position, they have been geolocated in another place, and basically entered deep into Serbianka. And this geolocation also means that all of this area here is taken. So Russian forces have captured the entire eastern part of Serbianka. And this is a strong foothold, and the Ukrainians are now looking like they are not able to defend this area here. They are probably on the retreat, because this geolocation here, this is a FPV drone strike. And if you look at the distance day-to-day advance, this is 1.5 kilometers, which means that there is only minimal resistance as the Russians push on 1.5 kilometers. That's very fast. Typically, when the Ukrainians are not defending at all, I think if they are totally withdrawn from the position. From my estimation so far, when I'm covering all these things, it seems to be around 2 kilometers. So 1.5 is like there's very minimal resistance. So the Russians are actually pushing very quickly. I believe the Ukrainians have dropped back to this defense line here, and probably some forward defensive positions will be here, defending against the Russian onslaught. But they basically have abandoned the urban region at Srebrenica by now. So that's probably what's happening in this sector here. And we move on to the next front line, the Bakhmut front. This is Bakhmut. At the Bakhmut front, in the northern flank, we have fighting reported towards Bondarne. This is not very usual. We don't see Bondarne March. The last time it was in January in this year, 20 January, and before that is November. So that's not a very usual place to have the name appearing. Fighting is reported at towards Minkivka, Orikovo, Vasilivka, and Makove. So this is actually very interesting. Getting a bit, yeah, these arrows are looks pretty legit. Of course, the Bondarne one is more interesting to me, as this is a very unusual report. Otherwise, this direction, I don't think so. I personally do not think the Russians are going to punch through all these defenses to go to Kramatorsk and get stuck there. So I don't think so. The off Kryhorivka around here, Russian forces geolocated along the canal, meaning that the Russians have tried to slowly consolidate the positions around here. Hard fight. No, I pity the Russian soldiers and the Ukrainian soldiers that they have to fight here, because it's a meaningless front, but they still have to fight. In the rest of the Bakhmut front, fighting is reported at Chasivya and towards Pitechny. In Stopochki, there is some major update of the front line. The important to note is that Stopochki was already announced captured by the Russian forces on the 25th of May, and the geolocation right now here is that the Russian forces have taken the entire south of Stopochki, and they basically is not able to directly attack into Pitechny, which is this settlement here, this entire blue broken chili. Yeah, I don't know what is this, brinjal. So anyway, this is yeah, the Russians cannot attack directly into Pitechny. So definitely hampering the strategic positions for the Ukrainians around here. Losing Pitechny means the Russian forces will be whoops, I wanted to measure. So it will be around 2 kilometers or 2.5 kilometers from Konstantinivka. And that will mean that the Russians will be at the closest point to Konstantinivka since forever. So this is pretty significant in terms of the advances. The next front line change, the New York front. This is Thorax City. At the Thorax City, this Thorax sector of the New York front, Russian forces doing the more or less the usual things, fighting at Bilohora, Kodyumivka, Dilievka, the battle within Thorax and Shebenivka. The main thing is happening over in the north of Thorax, where the Russian forces have expanded their Jurassic Park to this area here. They have captured more grounds along the railway line, and this is confirmed. And the Russian mapping have mapped that this sector here, east of Dilievka, is also taken by the Russian forces. So this is a Russian claim for now, because I do expect that it is not impossible for the Ukrainians to have this position here based on this geolocation, because it's just one geolocation here. It's very hard to say that, oh, it's just like this, So I draw it in a more conservative way, because this could be potentially a strong defensive position from the Ukrainian side. So the Russian forces taking these positions, heading up north, it's not impossible. But to take all of this is a bit, optimistic. So which is why I mapped it in a more conservative way. But the Russians, very positive, very optimistic. Over in the western flank, the Russian forces are fighting at Zoria, over at Alexandro Kalinove, Yablunivka, towards Stepanivka, towards Rusinya, towards Popovka and Popivka. Popivia. So this entire front line has activated again. The Russians are similarly to what happened at the Oskil front, has reactivated its offensive again in this sector. So things is getting busy again. At Popovka, there is a drone strike on the Ukrainian logistic over off Zoria. The Ukrainian mapping have mapped that the Russians have captured more grounds, corroborating a big chunk of the Russian claims in the northwest of Zoria. So the Russian forces continue to push towards Yablunivka and close down towards Alexandro Kalinove. So that's the main gist of the sector around here. So that's all from this area. We move on to the Pokrov front. This is Pokrov over in, and this is Minohrad. Over in the Minohrad sector, we have, let me adjust, fighting reported at Kotiv, Shevchenko, Pershi, Melanivka, Merne, Marolibivka, Hrodivka, Promin, and towards Minohrad. The main, there is some Ukrainian update that at Hrodivka disclaiming some of the claims at Hrodivka, not particularly important. I already covered in the situation in the frontline changes report. The over in the Shevchenko Pershi geolocation of Russian forces confirmed that the Russians at least is at where the Ukrainians have mapped it. So we have no confirmation of the Russians' capture of Kotiv yet. This is announced by the Russians on the 12th of June. So we still are waiting for intel for that. And the Merne Melanivka region, Russian forces confirmed to have entered into Merne based on Ukrainian mapping. So they still holding out some position in the southwest of Melanivka. So Melanivka is not confirmed captured just yet due to this this line of buildings here. But this line of building here, at Merne is just as short. So Merne, there's more here. Okay, so there's more here. So it's okay. Merne, half gone. Half gone. Not that bad. It's a half glass full, half glass not empty kind of situation. So it's either the Russians did not capture half of Merne or they have captured half of Merne. So they did not capture half of Merne. Failure. So that's all for this sector. And over the Pokrov sector, let me see how I adjust the mapping. Okay, so we have fighting reported at Lysivka, towards Novopavlivka, towards Pokrov, Udashne, Novosakhivka, Novomykolaivka, as well as Muravka. So this continued to be strategically more or less the same thing. As I mentioned before, south of Pokrov is going to be a static line. The main push is westward, but the Ukrainians are putting a very strong defense along this sector here, as they would want to prevent the Russians from going deeper into the Dnipro-Petrov sector. So this will continue to be the case. In the southern flank, we have fighting reported, just now I mentioned Muravka already, Kotlyarivka, Kharkove, and the Russian Defense Ministry for the first time mentioned Novopavlivka in the Dnipro-Petrov region. So this city here, or this town here, is mentioned for the first time that the Russians are attacking this area here, probably coming from the north of Kharkove. So that's the main thing currently happening here. But this is only mentioned on the 16th. Yesterday, 17th, they did not mention this. So yeah, probably it's not a very sustained thing. We move on to the next front line, the KOMAR front. So this is KOMAR. At the eastern flank of the KOMAR front, we have fighting reported at Andriivka, Oleksievka, Barhatie, Odradne, Zaporizhia, KOMAR, Merne, Fedorivka. So this, you can see basically the entire front line is basically burning, which means that this is actually a very serious offensive coming from the Russian side. They are pushing very hard across the entire front line. This is a big arrow movement. The Russians did claim the capture of Zelenikud and Oleksievka, but we do not have the mapping or geolocation to prove that yet. But the Russians did, according to the Ukrainian mapping, confirm to have entered into Zaporizhia, and so they have entered in this area, into this village, and they are probably going to capture the rest of it pretty soon. This looks like a punch, this is like a punch. Then yeah, so Zaporizhia got punched, and so the at KOMAR there is this geolocation of Russian forces in this sector. So just proof that the Russians are at KOMAR, but by the look of it, they do not have full absolute control over KOMAR and Budova. So we are still going to wait for more intel in terms of this. Of course, the Ukrainians continue to mention Fedorivka. Over in the rest, let me see how. So over in Off the KOMAR sector, there is Russian forces fighting at Bulatsk, Shevchenko, so Vinnypole. They are pushing towards Voskresenka. It could actually potentially come from Fedorivka, because the Russians did claim the capture of Fedorivka already. The Voskresenka is mentioned by the Russians, so which is why I say it is possible that the Russians feel like they basically actually captured Fedorivka already, and they are pushing towards Voskresenka. So that is a possibility. Malievka is also mentioned by the Russian Defense Ministry. This is probably just some shelling report. So we shall see how these continue to develop. As you can see, the entire front line is activated, and in the southern flank here, fighting is reported towards Temerivka and Novosilka. But that's all. This entire front line here is super dirty, super messy here. Yeah, we still do not have any form of resolution regarding this front line here. This looks really stupid. So we move on to the Huaypole sector of the Zaporizhia front. This Huaypole, and at Huaypole, fighting is reported now as Stepove, Melanivka, and towards Huaypole. Melanivka now is pretty much the standard fighting place now. 17 to the 14, only missing 115, 16, 17. There is still fighting at Melanivka. So the fighting at Melanivka is getting serious. Huaypole also is mentioned quite often. The past 3 days there was mention of Huaypole. And Stepove is a new addition. This last mention was in January. So the Huaypole front sector at Zaporizhia front is starting to become a serious front line. So we will definitely have to continue to keep a lookout for this sector. But this Huaypole, the operation here, is a bit difficult to, strategically. Capturing Huaypole will just allow them to go up the road, but there is a whole line of fortification protecting the road. The whole point is Perovsky. So this is a twin town here, Alexandrivka and Perovsky. This is where the Russians will want to take, because it's strategically important as it leads to multiple places. But yeah, I don't expect the Russians to be quite serious about this for now, unless they have fully taken the entire of the rest of the Donetsk region around at the KOMAR front. We move on to the rest of the Zaporizhia front. We have fighting reported towards Novodanilivka, fighting at Nestryanka, towards Pavlivka, and shelling at Stepnohursk. Geolocation of a Russian guided bomb over at Malotomashka was noted, but otherwise, yeah, pretty routine in the Zaporizhia front. And we move on to the last front line at the Kherson front. There is some shelling reported over at Zolota Balka, and over around the Kherson, the Dnieper River. We have shelling reported at Mikhailsk and Antonivka. So the Ukrainian Defense Ministry continue to report that the Russians are continuing to attack towards the Antonovsky Bridge, which means that they are fighting at Dachi. So if you look at the Ukrainian report, they say that the Russians are in the area of the Antonovsky Bridge, and the Ukrainians repel attack of the Russians in the area of Antonovsky Bridge, which means that the Russians are now attacking Dachi right now, and the Ukrainians are holding defense over here. Antonovsky Bridge is here, which is under Ukrainian control. I think the bridge is also heavily damaged. So, but we shall see. This is if the Russians capture back Dachi, it will be strategically complicated for the Ukrainians, because that will potentially allows the Russians to retake the rest of the Antonovsky Bridge, create a foothold in the north, and enter back into Kherson. So we shall see how this go. I don't think that is anytime soon yet, because I don't think the time is ripe for the Russians to go back to the northern half of Kherson. So anyway, that's about it. This is the summary for the day of 1209 for the 1 to 1210, 16 to 17 of June for the Ukraine war, or the special military operation in Ukraine. So much things to say for half an hour, and yeah, imagine mapping this takes way longer. So anyway, thank you. That's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next update.